Welcome to Let's Go Outside, a podcast bringing moms together to chat about the raw, unfiltered reality of doing the exploring we love after having kids. No matter your comfort level of adventuring with the little ones, this is a space to have honest conversations about the real struggles of getting out the door with the kiddos. I'm Danica, a mama living in a small mountain town who's totally obsessed with healthy food and taking my kids outside every single day. I professionally guided backpacking trips in the Canadian Rockies, and I'm certified as a Leave No Trace instructor. On the show, you'll hear real experiences from other moms, plus tips on gear, trail snacks, and the best practices in the wilderness. Whether it's hiking, camping, backpacking, skiing, or traveling the world you want to do more of, this is your place to learn, find encouragement, and strip away any comparison. Come embrace both motherhood and the outdoors. Stick around. This is your place. Welcome to the Outdoor Mom Club. Welcome to the Let's Go Outside podcast. Today is a solo episode with me. I thought I would take some time to share about how my summer was, where we're at in life right now, and just what's going on over here. I will give you a little insight, so to give you a heads up of what this episode is going to look like. But I thought I would share a little bit about my pregnancy. I'm in my third pregnancy right now, and just over halfway. And then I wanted to share about the trips I did in August, one being a car camping trip to Dinosaur Provincial Park, one being a backpacking trip to Elk Lakes, and then I did a solo international trip, and I thought I would just share about how that was as a mom during that trip. And lastly, we just got back from... Sorry, I'm laughing. My kids are outside barefoot in the rain. They ran out there. That's okay. Lastly, we just finished a canoe trip, and so I thought I would share how that went and dive deeper into what it takes to do a canoe trip with kids and your family. And then also I'll just share specifically about Lakeland Provincial Park, which is in Lakeland, Alberta. And yeah, hope that that's interesting to people. I know a lot of people have mentioned to me that they would really like to do a canoe trip, but it's something that they're just not really sure where to start. So I will share about that and how kind of we got to this place of canoe camping as a family. So yeah, so to share a little bit about my pregnancy to start, it's been my hardest pregnancy, and specifically the first trimester was the hardest part of any pregnancy that I've had so far. And just because I was plagued with exhaustion, major exhaustion and nausea, and there was sickness, but it left off. I had it up for about 4 or 5 days. So for people that do experience major sickness their whole entire pregnancy, I got a little taste of it, and I like, kudos to you if you experienced that, because it was impressive, and I just thought I was going to be in bed for the next 18 weeks, and thankfully it went away. But it was gnarly with two little kids. So my boys right now are 5 and 2.5, and I'm thankful that they can be helpful and kind of get themselves a snack and do what they need to do. But it was a hard season going into the summer and being in the summer very exhausted. It was like I would eat breakfast and then I would be ready for a nap. And I usually do my food blogging and my work during the afternoon. We have a 2-hour period where the kids do quiet time and nap time, and I was not able to do any of it for 3 months. So really slowed down. I also was not able to create any recipes just because of being around food. I did not really want to do that at all. It was such a weird feeling for me to be in, and I think that it gave me a lot of insight when people just say like, I don't know what to have for dinner, Danica, just like tell me a recipe. Because I'd never felt that way before. I often dream about dinner all day and think about what I'm going to make, or create a menu at the beginning of the week and then look forward to it all week. And so for me not to even be able to be in the kitchen and just be so nauseous and just be like, just give me something that will sustain me and I'll just eat it, was just wild. So we did a lot of grilled cheese and scrambled eggs in that season. I also have to say that it's my husband's busiest season from the start of May until Labor Day weekend in September. And so May and June being the busiest, which was even trickier. So it was a lot of long solo days for me. And if you are also, I know a lot of people are like this, but in the summer, you want to fit in as much as possible. Like, you've been dreaming of it all year. Winter's awesome too if you're a winter sports person, but summer is just long, beautiful days, lots of energy. And so I always, since I was like 13, have written a bucket list of what I want to do, and just to not get to the end of the summer and have like FOMO, or like, you know, not FOMO, I guess, but like regrets, and just kind of use my summer to the fullest. So this summer though, I just had to decide at the beginning that I was not going to make a list. And there was, the trips that I did in August were kind of like, I was holding with an open hand and being like, I would really love for these to happen, but I don't even know if I'm going to be sick then. But kind of put them there so that I knew summer was going to be busy. And so if you kind of pencil it in, you'd be like, okay, I'll save these days and I'll save these days and we'll work towards that, you know, as well as planning them with people really helped, I think, give me something to look forward to and communicate with, and motivation to work towards. So anyhow, so I was sick all May, June, and July. And then at the end of July, it lifted, and I was so thankful. And I was starting to do more, which I'm so thankful. And I think that it was a good reminder. And I think we all go through seasons of this where it's like, I just want to be outside, or I feel like I need to be doing more, and reminding ourselves that these seasons also matter. And that this is where I'm called to be right now, and this is good. And so even if it was lying in bed and getting sunshine from my window, to be okay with that, and knowing that this season is short, and that there's there's just such a purpose, and I can still carry value in laying in bed and cuddling with my kids and reading books, and not long adventure days or big moments, but just little walks a few minutes from home. And so that's really how my summer started. And it was hard. It was really hard, I think, too, in the age of social media, when we go on and see everyone's adventures, and knowing I wanted to do that, but also being like, you know what, this is just not where we're at right now. And so if you're also feeling that, know that seasons shift, and it's okay, and there can be beauty and special moments in those slow, mundane, boring, hard, if we choose to look for them. Yeah, that's what I have to say about that, the beginning of summer. So into August, I took the boys to Dinosaur Provincial Park, which is not in Drumheller. It's not like Drumheller is known for dinosaur bones and like exploring that area for those kinds of things. But this is south end of that, about 2 hours. It's probably about 2 hours east of Calgary. And it's an area with like all these coulees. So it's these big mounds of dirt and sandstone, I would guess. Big hills that go down to the valley bottom where there's a river, and it's really cool, different mounds that you can climb on and hide in, and the kids love to explore on them. So there's a campground there, and I went with my sister-in-laws, one of them who has a baby and a toddler, and the other one brought her dog and was able to be present with us and do life with us. So that was like really, really special to have some cousins together. It's a perfect place to bring bikes to. There's a playground there. There is a river there. It's just beautiful. That was my second time there. The first time we used the group campsite, and I would definitely recommend that for the future if people want to go. I think there's like 7 sites at the group campsite, something about that, like around that. And it's very private, and it's surrounded by beautiful bushes that back onto the coulees. And so I would really recommend doing that, and I am looking forward to doing something like that again in the future. But they do have rattlesnakes there, and we encountered 3 in the campground, which is wild. But their staff it just must be in the staff's job description, just like snake wrangler. And that was so fascinating because I did a podcast episode in June earlier this summer about bears and animals, and we talked about rattlesnakes in there too with Stephanie, and she talked about how she grew up with it in the coulees and in southern Alberta, and then to experience it for my first time was so fascinating. It was very interesting. So really cool to see them, and they removed them from the campground, and we were all good, and they didn't have a negative impact on anyone while we were there. So that was really interesting and cool. So yeah, we did that. After that car camping trip, we meaning me and the 2 little boys, went with another mom that has kids a very similar age, and we went to Elk Lake Provincial Park. And this is on the border of British Columbia and Alberta. It is a backpacking destination. You can hike in from Kananaskis on the Alberta side, or you can hike in north of Elkford on the BC side. And so in the winter, I had done a women's ski trip in, and it's about 8 kilometers, I want to say, from the Kananaskis Peter Lougheed Park. And we cross-country skied in, and there's a cabin there, and you can rent out the cabin, and that was amazing and super cool. And that was something I knew I couldn't do with my kids because it was just too far at this time. Like, if they were a little bit smaller, maybe I would pull them in the chariot, but the age that they're at right now, and I just knew I wouldn't. So anyhow, it's been on my list for a while because if you go from the BC side, it's a 1 kilometer hike in, and it's pretty chill, like super chill. And you get to like a stunning backcountry lake, and the campground is right beside it. And there is about 10 campsites, I want to say. And so, all the toddlers and the kiddos, we had 4 kids under 5, and so they all had a bicycle, and they biked in. It's a very wide trail with only a few hills, and so they all biked in, and I, being pregnant, decided to take the chariot and just push it full of our camping gear. And so it had all of our gear, all of our clothing, everything that I would have needed or would have put on my back, as well as all the food in there. And so I had no intention of letting the kids sit in there at all, and they did not. And so I pushed that in and did not carry anything on my back, which was so perfect. And I think if they're because that trail was 1 kilometer and chill, that's why we could do it this year, or else I'm not sure that I would have really done a backpacking trip this year. So that was really, really special. And Shannon, Restless Crusade, she's been on the podcast before for the Nepal episode, but she has a blog post all about Elk Lakes, and she actually said that her twin girls, biked in there. So that's where I got the idea to do that. So I'll maybe link that blog post if anyone's interested in going there. But Yeah, so that was an interesting experience because it was a solo backpacking trip, and I've done that one other time before. Last year, it was like a big challenge of mine to do, or it was a goal of mine to do. And honestly, I think the biggest takeaway for me has been to go with friends. It's been such a big encouragement and help and motivating. And so to do it with friends was so special. The first night that we were there, it unexpectedly rained, which was fine. We were prepared, but also expecting it the next day more. And so when it came to bedtime, because of the rain, usually I do the little routine with the kids, and like the same routine that we do at home, put them down in the tent, and then I leave and let them self-settle, which is what we do at home. And because it was raining, I was in there with them. And I had also, when I set up the tent, I was using my 2-man tent that we do lend out a lot, and we have used a ton over the years. And I did not realize, but one of the poles was like taped together but kind of busted. And so it was at the very foot of the tent, because it's kind of like a long tunnel tent and it's pretty tiny. I slept in it last year with the boys, but this year they just seemed so much bigger, honestly. And when we got in there, it was kind of crowded. And then with the pole broken, it made it even more droopy, saggy. And then it's raining. And so it wasn't really a great scenario at that time. I was like willing to do it, and it was fine. But they got hyper with me in there, as they do, and especially the first night camping, they're excited. And so I'm laying in my sleeping bag trying to just like chill out and wait for them to sleep. But the tent starts sagging right in my face. Like the net is on my nose, and they were crawling over me, and it was getting so hot in there. It got to the point, this was going on for like 45 minutes. I had read them I don't think I read them a story. I think I told them a story. And I just started getting really anxious and claustrophobic and overwhelmed. And it was an awful feeling. It was really, really awful. And I just didn't know what to do. And I had forgotten their nighttime diapers, which we are slowly weaning off of at this point. And so it's like hit or miss if we need them. But in this scenario, I just really didn't want an accident in a tent or in a thermarest. Like, that is not fun, right? And so with all of those factors present, I was just like kind of lying there getting overwhelmed and a little bit like, oh man, this is going to be a long night. Very squishy in this tent. And then there starts to be a puddle of water at our feet from the rain because it's drooping. And because the fly is touching the net, which is often when you'll get water leakage in your tent, is if you touch the fly, which is also my kids were doing, and the rain was leaking in. But then also because the fly was resting on the tent because the pole was broken. So at this point, I remembered that I had left my 4-man tent in our vehicle because Daniel, such a smarty, was like, Danica, if the campground's full, which I did not know if it was going to be or not, but we had heard it's a pretty busy campground. He was like, take the bigger tent, and if it's full, you and your friend and all the kids can fit in that tent and share one tent pad. And so that's what I did, and I left it in the car, which is fine. And so I get out of the tent and I tell my friend, like, we can't do this night in there. Like, I'm so overwhelmed. It's kind of stressful. My kids are crazy. Would you mind just like being present outside here? And I'm going to run and get the other tent and come back. So I like jog down the trail. It's like 9 p.m. So it's getting dark, and I have my bear spray. I have my headlamp and a backpack to carry the tent back in. So I go do that. Come back. It probably took me about 30 minutes. And I come back. They had fallen asleep, which was not surprised. That's usually what happens when I leave. And then I set up the tent. My friend helps me with that. And then I transferred the kids over into the other tent, and we slept in there. And it was quite a rough night. One of them did wet the sleeping bag, and because the tent was so big for 4-man, we ended up shifting all the mats, and like I was sleeping on the ground because the kids were sleeping on my mat, and my hips were like so sore from running back to the tent or running back to the van. Anyhow, it was a rough night with both of them waking up multiple times, but I had to tell myself and be my own cheerleader in that moment and be like, Danica, you always say the first night is the worst, and that people should always go camping and backpacking 2 nights at least, because the first one is always, you got to get all the shakes and the giggles and all the things out, and the second night is always better. And so yeah, it was tricky in the morning being wet, and then we had one kiddo fall into the lake when we were washing dishes, and because we were both doing like a solo parenting trip with our kids, we packed very minimalist, and so we were not expecting it to be that cold, I'd say, and so at that point we were also just like, oh man, like I hope the sun comes out, because we've got a lot of wet stuff at this point. So anyways, the sun started to come out, the rain started to lift, we hung up the clothes, and the 4 kids jumped on their bikes, and we headed up to the next lake, which I think it's about 2 kilometers to the bridge, which was like our first milestone to see if we'd make it. And then we left the bikes at the bridge and got to the next lake, and that's a couple up hills, and it's just stunning though. This Elk Lake Provincial Park is just stunning. There is, you could hike even further to a waterfall, which we did not attempt. We were pretty exhausted with everyone, but the rocks and the mountains just shoot up straight all around you, and it's just a stunning location. So I definitely recommend Elk Lakes for anyone that is looking for something approachable. It's a perfect first time backpacking trip. It's also just a beautiful location if you're looking for something to do with the kids. If you want a longer hike, you could come in from the Kananaskis side, and then in the winter consider doing the hike. So I would definitely say check out Elk Lakes, and I would encourage you, if you're interested in doing a solo backpacking trip, to go with a friend. That's what I would say, because it makes it so much better. If you are into making healthy homemade snacks, I wanted to let you know that I have a huge library of homemade muffin recipes. They're all healthy. My goal is to make them nutrient dense with things like fruit, high in protein, whole wheat flour, low in sugar, no dairy. I mean, whatever you're looking for, it's there. The goal is that it won't break the bank, and that you can actually find these ingredients, most being in your house. So go to besidethemountain.com/muffins, and you'll find all of my recipes. My favorites are the gingerbread pumpkin muffin, the whole wheat apple muffins with banana, and the blender orange muffins. You're gonna love them. As a somewhat crunchy mom, I care about the fibers my kids wear. I haven't switched everything over yet, but the one material I'm always looking for is merino wool. It comes from sheep, and it's processed into fabric that's naturally quick drying, breathable, and temperature regulating. For base layers, especially ones my kids wear repeat on trips, merino wool is my first choice. So I wanted to tell you all about Wee Woolies. They're a Canadian company that specializes in kids' base layers, making ultra soft wool from New Zealand sheep. Their clothing comes in many fun colors, keeping kids warm when it's cold and cool when it's hot. For Let's Go Outside listeners, use the code Let's Go Outside to get 10% off your next Wee Woolies order. The link is in the show notes. So after those 2 trips at the end of August, I had one of my best friends get married in the UK, which we had known far in advance, and so we had been pacing for it kind of all year. And the question had been for a while, do I take the kids? Can we go as a family and then do some more Europe after that? But really with Daniel's work schedule, we couldn't swing it. And so I was like, no, I'm not doing this with my kiddos. I'm in the wedding. I want to be present, and it's tricky to agree to these things when you're a mom, I think. But I just kind of try and remind myself that there's this part of Danica that exists when my kids move out of my house. And there's a little things that I want to hang on to and things that are really meaningful and important to me. And one of the things is these friendships and being there to celebrate with them. And so this was something that was super important to me. And so I went without my kids it was a 7-day, I think, trip that I was in the UK for, but I ended up not seeing my kids for 10 days, I think, which was wild. It was the longest I've been away from them for sure. So 5 days my parents watched the kids, and then 5 days Daniel watched the kids and did life with them and worked a little bit with them too. I would say it was honestly, looking back and finishing the trip, it was the hardest on me. Those moments where I was in the plane alone, on the train alone, in my accommodation alone, those were when it was so hard, and I was like, I don't really remember how to do life like this, and really missed them a lot and wanted to, and really kind of felt bad. I did feel guilty. I just didn't want to exhaust my parents or Daniel. I knew that it was really the end of Daniel's busy work season where he's really tired and he's done a lot for the last 4 months. And so I think that was a bit of like, it felt like a burden. And I think that coming back, I realized that it wasn't, that these people like my parents and Daniel really enjoyed the time with the kids, and they did so well, and they were so well taken care of. And they knew what their needs were and were able to just, make it happen. And so, yeah, that was just a wild thing. I don't love being away from them for that long, but it was such a special wedding. And it was one of those weddings and celebrations where you're just floating afterwards, and you just felt it was so magical and special, and there's nothing else like it, to have all those people together dancing and singing, and oh my goodness, it was so special. So anyhow, that was the little recap there. I just want to let you know it's possible. The longest I had been away from them before that was 4 days. So big leap. Anyhow, it all went well. So then when I got back, Daniel's work season ended kind of the last 2 days that I was gone. And September for us is such a special month because it's when Daniel finishes his work season, but the weather is still so good around here to do adventures before it snows and get up into the mountains before there's snow up there, and you can't really reach the Alpine very much. And it's too cold to do stuff, which, I mean, you can keep going if you're hardcore into October and November, and then transition into the winter outdoor life. But September is just really where all those special things converge, it feels like. So we do purposely plan to do trips and kind of know that September is going to be busy with adventures. So we have done a canoe trip this is our 4th year doing a canoe trip as a family, and we really got into this because we knew that we didn't want to hike with toddlers. I know that sounds really selfish, and we could do it. However, we really like canoeing. I grew up doing some canoe camping with my family, and it's just, you can bring more items. That's the other perk of it too, but you're still in the backcountry or the wilderness. So I'd say the first 2 years when we just had one child, we did a lot more backpacking and carried them, and it was all good and fine. And I mean, you have to bring a lot of stuff for babies, I feel like, when they're little, which is fine. We were able to pack it in. I think it's totally doable. I think that you can if you've done backpacking without kids, you can totally do it with kids. It's a bigger learning curve if you haven't done it with kids, but it's also still doable. Anyhow, canoe camping is something that we knew we want to transition into. I honestly have done paddling. I'm not like an incredible avid paddler. I'm getting better at my J-stroke. I'm not super hardcore, but I can paddle. Daniel, about 4 years ago, did a canoe, like a flat water canoe course, and during that time, he was kind of introduced to it and really, really enjoyed it and liked it. And so I was like, let's do this. Let's get it. Let's try it. And we started with one kid, and we did a one-night trip across a small local lake, camped halfway, and then canoed back the next day. And the transition from backpacking to canoe camping is wild, because the amount of stuff that you can put in a canoe, from just being able to just carry the most minimal amount of things on your back to being able to bring chairs and a cooler and heavy food is, it's just a really wild feeling. So that's how we got into it. Then I think the first year we did 2 trips that were both one night on a flat lake. The next year we did Solcan Lake, which is a beautiful lake in British Columbia. I believe it's north of Nilsen. And we did that for about 4 nights. I think it was 5 days. And we loved it. There was one point on that trip where the water got quite rough and the waves were big. And I think we might have had to pull to the side for a bit and wait it out. But other than that, it was pretty chill. And we loved that trip. We wanted to stay out longer. It was just so special, and it was a quiet lake. That's one of my favorite places ever. Like, it's just a stunning place. Since we've been there has been a big forest fire about 2 years ago, and so I'm not sure the state of the campsites anymore, but that is an incredible place to go. And then last year we did Murtle Lake, which is also in British Columbia, north of like Valmont. That is like a lake that's a backwards shape of an L, and with all these sandy beaches that you can camp on. And that is just stunning and a beautiful location. Murtle, you do need to portage in. So portaging is when you are carrying your stuff and your canoe on a hiking trail, which into Murtle is about a 3.5 kilometer hike in, and you need to bring your own wheels and strap it to. So, and then once you're on the lake, there's no more portaging. But that's a really, really cool location. So this year, we went to Lakeland, which Daniel had been there earlier this summer in June to teach a course. He'd been up there. That was his first time. And he saw this is really chill. This would be great for our family. Really cool to do the only canoe circuit in Alberta. Which does have a couple portages on it, but I think we thought it was doable. So it was. So we did that. We just got home last night. Yesterday we woke up in the tent on the lake there. And so I thought I would share a little bit more about that trip, which was just so cool. So that was, this is in Lakeland, north of Edmonton in Alberta. And it is a 3.5 kilometer portage in. We brought our kids' bikes once again on this trip, and it was just, we were so happy we did. So thankful. It was just the best move. We just kept talking about how awesome it was that we had the kids' bikes. And so we loaded up the canoe, strapped the canoe to the cart that they have there. They have carts there for you at Lakeland Circuit. And then we put all our stuff in there, and Daniel and I pulled the canoe and the kids' bikes, and that took us just over an hour, which was pretty awesome. And then there's a dock there because it's kind of like a swampy area to start, or like kind of like a wetland with like lots of like reeds. And so there's a dock that you go out onto, lower your canoe into, and then put all your stuff in the canoe. And then we started canoeing, and I think loading all our stuff and then getting to our campsite, we paddled from Jackson Lake to Canard Lake and got to this peninsula campsite, which was so beautiful. On kind of like on both sides, we had a little bit of a sandy area where the kids could be in the water. And at every campsite on this circuit, there is a picnic table and an outhouse and a fire ring, and so it feels kind of luxurious. It's pretty awesome when you're like coming from backpacking, and it's so quiet. it was so quiet. I mean, there was people at the other campsites, but we had this campsite to ourselves, and we stayed there for 2 nights. And so to get there, we paddled probably 2 hours, and that included a little section where if there's a little passageway that connects the 2 lakes together. And earlier in the year, Daniel had paddled it, and usually when the water's higher, you can paddle right through it. But for us in September, it was muddy, and so about 100 feet of mud we had to pull our canoe over, which was pretty challenging. That was one of the hardest parts of the trip, probably. But we did it. So we did that. We got to our campsite. It was beautiful. There's cell service pretty much everywhere on this circuit also, side note. And we were like, we could just remote work out here. So anyways, so we continued to do this whole circuit. We were very pleasantly surprised to find at the next 2 portages there was also these heavy duty good wheels to put our boat on. We had brought tiny ones that I borrowed from my parents, but we ended up not using them because these carts were just so good. And so that was amazing. They are in the process right now at Lakeland of updating all the trails, like the portages and the entry and exit points of the lakes. And so they're putting like docks / ramps in the water, which we kind of hit it at right at the perfect point because we got the perks of the new docks and the new trails and the carts. And so I think there was just like 2 sections that we didn't get to use yet, but so that's really cool. As of September 2025, we had that access. So that is awesome. It's only going to be better next year. I think when they're finishing up everything, kind of doing a big upgrade, and and it was so fun. Yeah. Our friend was on the trail crew for that and working there while we were there, and we got to hang out with him a bit and see that in action. So that was like super awesome. We did not plan that at all. And so when you're in the middle of nowhere and you get to see a friend is like the coolest thing ever. Yeah, I would recommend though, if you want to do Lakeland circuit, I would just call the park and see like how the portages are and the passages, like if the water is shallow and if there is indeed carts still out there. And if they change that at all, just to know ahead of time if you need to bring your own wheels or not. I would also recommend doing it earlier in the year just for the water quality. The water quality, and I think the passages to go between the lakes would be better to do it in June, July, or August instead of September. But the bugs were not bad. There was I think the last day there was like these little no-see-ums or something that were biting us, and those were really annoying. But other than that, like I thought because it was like a bird kind of sanctuary place, they would be worse. But maybe it's, the whole ecosystem is doing super great there and there's not a ton of bad bugs. Anyhow, so that is canoe trapping as a family. A lot of people mention, how do you get your kids to stay in the boat and enjoy it for that long? And honestly, I would say we canoe on average 2 hours a day when we're doing these canoe trips. Like it's not a long time in the boat, and so it's a pretty luxurious adventure because you have everything you need, and for the kids you can just throw it in the boat and set up camp and paddle your 2 hours and hang out and cook. And so there's not a lot of super long days except for I'd say it's longer when you're portaging, but at that point the kids do so good at the change of scenery, right? Like they're in the boat sitting for a while and then they can and the other portages on the Lakeland circuit there was like a 1 kilometer one and then I think a 500 meter one. So it was like really chill. And then in the boat, we always have a duck for them, a rubber duck tied to a string so they can drag that. We just get okay with having some drag. And they often have a bag full of bars that they can pick and eat and enjoy. And then our oldest son has a fishing rod that he will often try and fish with. And then we have kids' paddles. So between those things, they are pretty happy to just look for birds and enjoy. And then my youngest son is now 2.5, but the last couple years he has napped in the front of the boat in front of me. So that has been what's happening. And then how we do it is that one child sits in front of Daniel and one child sits in front of me. And when we have 3 kids, I'm not sure how that's going to go yet. I think we will maybe bring some more people along with us and put a kid in their boat or something like that. Or maybe we'll have 2 kids in front of me or in the very front of the boat. But we'll see how that goes. So I would say if you're interested in getting into canoe camping, you should definitely try it. Find a lake locally that you know that there's a campsite on, and go give it a go. I would say start paddling and see how your family does in a boat and if they like it and how confident you feel. I would say there's probably some good YouTube videos on steering a boat or paddling. But also, if you're interested and you live in southern Alberta, I have connections and access to running a canoe course. So if there's enough interest in that, we could run a course so that people could gain the skills in a canoe and become more confident in that before going out and doing that. So let me know if you're interested in that in Instagram or in our Facebook group. I would also say with canoe tripping, give yourself more time. Give yourself an extra day or 2. If the water is rough, then you can wait a day and go the next day. Or often lakes are pretty rough in the afternoon or the evening, and so knowing to go the next morning, early in the morning. So just having a lot of time to be able to shift the plan as needed is really helpful on a canoe trip, I would say. So ask the locals about how the lake is and what the conditions and what kind of is the pattern, and that really gives you an idea. The lake that we are looking and hoping to do in the coming future is called Turner Lake, and it is in northwest British Columbia, and it's actually so remote that you need to hire a plane that drops you off, and you rent a canoe there that's already there for you, and you're dropped off with your stuff, and then you do a little circuit, and then the plane comes and picks you up again and you go back out. And so we would love to do that coming up, so that's something that is on our radar. But keep your ears open for lakes that has campsites on it, and try out a canoe trip. So I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you have more questions about canoe camping. And I love it so much, and I think it's such a good crossroads for families and going outside. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share. I feel like our adventures this summer were very they were just loaded into the last month, honestly, and it was because I was feeling better and because the weather is good right now and because Daniel's done. So we are actually getting ready now. In 2 weeks we're going to go on a bike trip, and that's something that is totally new to us. We have never done that before, never done that without kids or with kids, but it's something we wanted to try before we have 3 kids and see kind of if the ins and outs of it and if it's a possibility for our family. And so we're going to go with my parents. We're going to take our chariot for our youngest. He'll be in the chariot or on the shotgun in front of one of us. That's a seat that goes in front of you. And then our oldest will either ride his own bike or have a bike that attaches to one of our bikes. We're still working that out. And if he rides his own bike, then we would have room for him and his bike in our chariot if he needs a break. So we'll just see how many kilometers we can actually go and what it looks like to pack our gear on bikes. It's definitely going to have to be a lot more minimalist than our canoe trips, but we're going to give it a go. So that's where we're at right now. After these trips, it's going to be quiet for us and slow, and we kind of do them all in a chunk, and then it's like, okay, now we're done. Now it's slow again. So if it sounds crazy that there's all these trips going on, that is actually why, because we're just trying to jam them into this summer season, especially like Daniel is now off and I need to slow down for all these trips. Anyhow, thank you for listening along today. I really do enjoy chatting with you this morning about their adventures and how it's going with their kids, and it's been so inspiring for me. So I am just so excited for also have been enjoying them, please let me know on Instagram or in the Facebook group, and let me know if there is a topic that you want to hear more about or a person that you want to hear from. I'd love to hear about it. And yeah, this podcast is small, but it has really been growing lately, so I'm so thankful for that. And if you think of someone that would really enjoy this podcast or you think would benefit from it, please send it to friends, because I would love it to reach more families that are wanting to go outside with their kids and love to do these kinds of things. So thanks for being here, and thanks for listening today.